is Mr. Keith Mikkelson. Keith is the executive director of the Aloha House. I want to say the farm comes before the earth. An orphanage on an organic farm in... An orphanage on an organic farm in Puerto Princesa, Palawan, Philippines. And Keith and his wife Narcy and their son Archie are here. Keith, how many conferences have you been to?
4 here and then Florida.
Wow, 4 here and 1 in Florida. And Keith has an amazing story and an amazing place in Puerto Princesa. We've had 2 Echo Asia Philippines workshops there, the most recent in May at his place. And it's just a joy to go out and see the mix and their farm and just learn from what you guys are doing. You're doing some amazing stuff. Keith this morning is going to talk about natural farming, a key to higher output with lower inputs. So let's give it up for Keith Mikkelson.
Thanks. This is my halfway marker. Now, I gotta close you guys out. Does that come out of my time?
No,
Okay.
I just turned that button on.
Perfect. There it is. Okay, so it's not on ecotourism, but Palawan's pretty neat and unique, and I'll give you a little background on it. It's not really about the orphanage, though we do help a lot of children over the years. We place them into permanent families, so we're able to match and select Christian families. We placed over 60 plus children into permanent families, and of course they get a life book there on their short time with us. We focus on 0 to 3-year-old, so those are the most needy on our island. Anyways, natural farming, a key to higher production with reduced inputs. Well, reduced purchased inputs, because we're going to look at the 10 fundamentals that I call of sustainable agriculture, and one is legume usage. So you're going to grow some kind of a bean or a nitrogen fixer, and you're actually putting in, for a higher yield, more input, but it's happening biologically. We don't need to buy that stuff. Here's the problem: almost 1 billion people still hungry. Big problem worldwide. So what can we do? Well, we're a small farm resource center, and Ricky Bates last conference presented on us and 6 other centers. And is that available as a PDF somewhere in the Echo community? Great learning. Most of it's true. They had to exaggerate for us. There it is at Florida. So our farm, what you failed to mention, has 1 dog, organic dog. 2 sows, 4 cows, bucks, 14 cover crops, 25 goats, 33 herbs, 500 chicken, 3,000, 20,000 bees, 1 million worms, 38 quadrillion beneficial microorganisms down in the soil, because the soil is the foundation. If you're a fisherman, then it's that environment within the water. So we have on-farm trainings there, and there's a whole background around us. Okay, so my definition of natural farming is using and enhancing natural methods of traditional agriculture. So there's a zola. So that's a floating fern. Feed it to your fish, our chickens, goats. It's tied into an aquaponic recirculating system, but you can do it other ways. The point is, we work with nature instead of against it. That's really the heart of most sustainable production system. So instead of see the bug, kill the bug, we talk to the bug. We say, why are you there? And if we listen closely, he's going to say, well, your plant is low in calcium. You know, it's a soft tender, it's high in nitrates, and we're going to remove that for you because it's sick. And in traditional agriculture, we kill the messenger, poison the plant, and eat it. But in natural farming, we find ways to work in the soil and in the canopy of the plant and the orchard and things and enhance it. We practice creation care in community development. So we work with, composters and buffalo owners. The earth is not our mother. So we're not here to save the earth and save the world, but we can steward this thing. Our long-term goal, farm-generated fertility and feeds. And I know some of you are in remote, tough, desolate places, and you're going to have to bring a lot of material in to get that thing going. Maybe you're going to have to scoop up manure and truck in rice hull and charcoalize and all that. It's all good. But long-term, eventually, you tighten those loops up. Like vermicast, maybe you got to buy it. It's worthwhile in your potting mix. We use it in the soil blocker because of the humic crumble in there. Works really good in a potting, but you can do that somewhere within your farm eventually, especially if you have integrated livestock. Poster session coming up, so I've got one down there. 282 weeks, 5 years, 4 months, 27 days record keeping on the production of our vermiculture. And it's a particular style that produces, with this earthworm, a pure vermicast. Not vermicompost with some manure and screening. We top harvest this stuff. So there's one of our garden areas. And eventually these loops get tighter and more self-dependent, self-reliant. And so why do you have potting soil? Well, maybe you're doing intensive vegetable and herbs, and the crop residue might go to your hogs, and then that manure goes to the vermi, and then the vermi make castings for your potting soil, as an example. We can actually use baht, dong, rupee, all kinds of currencies here, but if it's reliant on, foreign funding and overseas funding, we start to create a little bit of a bubble in the economy, an artificial situation. So everything needs help getting started, but we want to turn things over locally. So that's why through my learning and as a Wisconsin boy living in the tropics, I'm as dumb as I am smart. I notice it never snows. You can grow food all year round. No more chopping wood to get through the winter. And so as I studied these different ideas, I saw a lot of different blended themes and concepts. And so integrated livestock seems to be, in agribusiness, totally isolated. You either have 1,000 cows and 1,000,000 chicken, or you're a rice farmer buying your fertility. But as we overlap these fundamentals, and it's all in the book there, we put that together as a program. So we call it a natural farming system for sustainable agriculture in the tropics. But yeah, even if you need fertility in the beginning, instead of buying fertilizer, what if you just hired a day worker and he gathered organic material and you composted it and fermented it and bokashied it? Well, at 5,000 baht or so, that's only 5 bags of complete fertilizer. And those are just the macronutrients with no trace elements, no organic matter going into the soil. But if that fellow works 25 days a month and he's lazy, he'll only make 1 ton of compost a day. That's 25 tons of material that's biodiverse, rich in organisms and nutrition. So I always say, if you're going to do an agricultural program and spray and nuke and poison those vegetables and foods for your people, you might as well just go to the market and buy it. It's cheaper than an agricultural program bent over toward the modern thing. But if you can get the inputs up, here in Palawan, that's us, almost across from lower Thailand, yeah? Long Island, about the length of Florida. Over 1 million people on there, but very remote. There's our Susahona barbis, that's a native pig. So some people, that's as big as it gets, about a drumstick size thing. Here he is. We've got the saltwater crocodile. Ooh, arthropods. These guys carry their young. Musang, ooh, coffee. Here's the Bengal leopard cat we found on our farm. Loves chicken. All kinds of lizards and things. It's just a neat area. So the mayor's branded it a city in the forest, and we have an endemic peacock, smaller than the Chinese peacock, And that's on all the police cars, not that I would know. Underground River is a national World Heritage Site. And you take a little van and then you take one of these fisherman boats to the mouth of the exit of the river. And all kinds of forest there, crab-eating monkeys. There's 2 more monkeys. That's my family. And you go in this cave and it's the world's longest underground navigable river. And you got a guide there and you paddle in and paddle out. Really a unique place. So it's really the last frontier of the Philippines. Many Filipinos in Manila, they don't even know where it is on the map. We've got some endemic species there, like the Palawan cherry. It's a legume tree, beautiful, colors. Might remind you of Japan a little bit. There's edible weeds all over the place. Have you noticed that? Anywhere you are, look at these charts. I've just found 2 more edible weeds and fruits that Filipinos aren't eating. And I asked my wife, does that thing kill you? Well, Filipinos don't eat it. Hey, one's on the chart there. But in some cultures, you're not gonna sell edible weeds because it's got a stigma. So you rebrand it as wild vegetables, right? Back in the U.S., people are poisoning their lawn to kill purslane. And then they drive to Whole Foods, and for $10 a pound, they're buying organic purslane. And there's guidelines for this stuff, right? Road exhaust and water environments, and you need some boundaries there. You don't eat off of the freeway, but all kinds of stuff. This is an Amorphophallus, and here it is as a tuber. Big product in India. You want a gluten-free flour. They put it in their curries. It also has an inflorescence that they call stink cabbage. It's not quite carnivorous, but a lot of stuff dies in there. And then there it does another shoot later on in the year, produces all these berry-type seeds that don't preserve well. That's why you propagate from the root. So the tops, the leaf, the locals feed to pigs. And when I moved to the Philippines, I noticed all the ladies gathering these, big leaves. And my wife said, oh yeah, they feed that to the pig. A wild vegetable. You might want to contain them in a tower. So we've got mince and purslanes and different things like that. Here's the nepenthes, right? They're all over Asia. Different carnivorous plants. Pitcher plant. Here's a berry we have. They don't eat much. This one sleeps up in the mangrove, so when you go rafting, they're right above you. A professor in Thailand worked with a doctor on our island. They put together this chart because we have no anti-venom. And these are some of the friendly and deadly snakes on our island. That way you know which poison you have to eradicate. So there's the crew. Aloha House. We've got a city farm. We only own about 2,000 square meters, but we're using a hectare here and leasing a half hectare there, and we've grown into it over the years. So we're registered with, nonprofit, non-stock, helping children, mothers, and like I said, I'll show you how I started, composting, growing food, developing the system. We practice creation, science, and action. That means God created everything in balance. We're the problem. Man's been foolish through greed and laziness. Greed might be financial, but when it comes to land, it's getting out and not putting back. Laziness is not using your land, buying all your food when you could grow at least moringa in the backyard, right? So you might consider yourself a good person. You compare yourself and you say, well, I'm a development worker, or, I'm helping the poor, I'm a little better than most. But we're all enemies of God because of sin. Sin is not keeping the 10 Commandments. So it's perfectly clear when Jesus reiterated it that you shouldn't lie. If you lie, you're a liar. If you steal, you're a stealer, a thief. And if you murder, you say, well, there's one I haven't done, never been caught. But God makes it clear. If you even have hatred in your heart, you're a murderer. Guilty, guilty, guilty. See, our righteousness is not acceptable to God. will never be good enough for him. Never, ever. See, the 10 Commandments just show you your guilt. We're breakers of the law, transgressors. The wages of sin is death. That's the bad news. The good news is meaningless if you don't accept the bad news. The law is our schoolmaster. It shows us we need to be right, justified, paid in full at the cross through Jesus Christ. So we need to, so the gift of God is eternal life in Jesus Christ. We turn from sin, self-righteousness, religiosity, and we trust in Jesus Christ for His righteousness. That's the start to good farming. So we believe in doing good works. We do all kinds of things in our area, working with Mother's Program and livelihood. That's how we got into agriculture, starting to grow for ourselves. Our children come from all walks of life. So here's a mercury mine, not good soil, and families move in there to recycle. Worldwide now, there's people living in landfills. Well, we find the neediest groups and we work with local churches. We weigh the children in after they're qualified and we feed them from our farm. Even just once a week has a big difference that first 3 years in development. So you know the bone broth, you cook down your bone stock, get the minerals in there. Raw milk, properly handled, is better than most things. And we disguise the moringa in there because kids these days don't eat vegetables. Don't put the big leaf in there, right? Grind it, powderize it, sneak it in on them. And then we monitor their progress. So in this community, we spent 1.5 years on a weekly feeding, and we saw great success in those youngest, most vulnerable. You got to invest your feeding budget to the most needy, and I recommend 1 to 3 year old if you can. Here's an individual case that came to us. A little girl, mother had problems, not real good at parenting, big family, no husband. So 2 years old, already stunted, pneumonia, TB, malnourished. We call that triple parking. All kinds of problems stacked up. We give them good fruit juices, vegetable juices, whole grains, proper fats, natural foods. And sure enough, that little girl, along with the medication, of course, really improved. Eventually even learned to smile and walk with a late start in life. So praise God, we match them with qualified families. This family's got papayas in Australia. She knows how to eat that. And then we get updates. We get reports on their progress, and we get to see how they develop over the years if they want to stay in touch. They actually adopted 2 Aloha children. They came back for another. Well, a little about me. From Wisconsin, like I said, 50 plus now. Taught a lot of skiing in Wisconsin, then in Colorado. And then went to Hawaii. Taught windsurfing out on the water, back and forth. And then on a prayerful venture, I went on a short-term mission trip to the Philippines. It's kind of the backyard from Hawaii. And came back 2 more short-term trips. Moved to this island of Palawan because back then there were no children homes. I've been to other children homes in the Philippines and saw how they did things. And I noticed food production was not in the equation. So I said, okay, well, let's see what the Lord would do. See, my family's from Norway. My father was born on a farm, but he's not a farmer. My grandfather moved out of farming during the Green Revolution. He had to get big or get out. So we didn't start like this. In 1998, I stayed with Tribal Mission Philippines. Back then they were teaching up in the tribes, and they had a training center with salt hedges, renzoni, flamenja. Yeah, and then also I ran a square foot garden, a faith garden, and learned a lot there. Well, eventually we were able to rent a facility, and doulos came along and they helped us out painting. Before there were TV shows, they gave our house a makeover, electrical, all that stuff. So we wanted to make a sanctuary for the poor, but we knew the soil was a biological sanctuary. And if you read all the material out there, compost is magic. Oh yeah, you just make compost, you throw it in there, and you get everything you want. Yeah, it's hard work, first of all. To make it properly, you got to manage all your different materials. And we layer it to balance the carbon and nitrogen. You want some kind of bi-volume 2-to-1, 1-to-1 ratio. And if you do that properly with enough moisture, that core goes off. It gets hot. All natural volunteer organisms going to work for you. Trapezoidal shape's good. But you got to turn it because it winds down. That thermophilic process becomes mesophilic. Eventually, you build up the beneficial fungi and some other more complex forms of life. So we turn 3 times every week. Turn on Tuesday, turning Tuesday, okay? So every week we turn our piles. Now, we use manure because we have integrated livestock. We've got all kinds of manure. Now, does anyone know what the best manure is? This is our question time. Participate. I heard back, guano. Sir? The ones you use. That's why he's in the front. You planted him. It's the free manure. That's right. Don't neglect your free manure and go out and buy some exotic manure. Yeah, with integrated livestock, of course, we can tighten those loops up. So I started composting our kitchen waste. I didn't know about all the microbes, but, well, turning's a lot of work, and I was the only farmer in the beginning, so I built these big GI compost tumblers. Worked really good. Those humic acids and, all the microbes break things down, including the metal. What I learned in all that, as spectacular as compost is not enough. It's a variable nutrition going into your soil. So some weeks you got cow manure, some weeks you got eggshells, and next week you don't. And you got high calcium, low nitrogen, high phosphate. So unless you compost for a year and save it all and homogenize it and mix it, every month it's going to be a little different. So we got to make up for that. Now, seeds can make up for that if you get good hardy seeds that are appropriate for your area. So in 2000, this Echo Note, and wow, that really helped. And there's a rule there for introducing seeds, and I think that's going to be covered somewhere here. And don't forget the seed swap. Here we are, Echo Philippines. We had a conference there, and Filipinos know this is money. This is like currency. We covet those seeds, and it was dangerous. But it's orderly. Don't be afraid. This really helps fast track me. Yeah, Dr. Martin's note there. If you haven't read that, A Beginner's Guide, it'll save you a lot of headache, gentle warnings, wise advice. Acid soils of the tropics. Because see, as I was learning those fundamentals and hearing different versions, and if you're looking at Canadian, North American, European stuff, it's generally helpful, but it doesn't adapt perfectly. So now there, Dr. Harder, he's in the soil of the tropics. So I talk about a lot of that stuff in my book. So here's how we started. We bought a property, 2,000 square meters. We noticed the neighbor wasn't using the property. We were able to start converting that Kogan grass, Imperata, and treating it with microbes, stressing it, exhausting the root, right? There's energy in the root. Every time you cut or burn that, it comes back. But if you can do it 3 times in a row, spread out before it flowers, you zap that root. Then you spray it with your microbes, plow it in, and now you convert it. So you can see here, little patches, little bit at a time. Right about then, I learned about IMOs, Korean natural farming. Yeah, you can brew all these different microbes, wild harvest, and propagate them. So I started doing that, and that helped. I also came across a commercial product. It's made in a lab. That gives you the security of not adding pathogens. But it is a purchased input. Highly economical, but worth doing. I compared them, brewing my own and culturing from the lab, EM1, they both perform great. You've got to decide. We built soil fertility with beneficial microorganisms. And they're not magic either. Because if they don't have any organic matter to work, you're not going to progress. You need the compost, the material going into the soil, and you need to steer the microbial colony. So there it is, 2005, 2008, and that was all Kogan grass. So once you eliminate Kogan, use it or lose it, because you've got 50-year-old seeds in there that are going to want to come back. But if you're doing corn or vegetables and herbs. So we're a teaching center. We've got regular farmers working day in and day out there, all kinds of materials and videos. We're not a demo farm, we're an actual farm. So we watch our bottom line. We're a profitable farm. The Bible says, he who works his land will have abundant food, but he who chases fantasies lacks judgment. And a fantasy's a rumor. There's so many things out there to pick from. And you have to carefully experiment before you teach. We also have an internship. So we've had them from all over, mainly Filipinos, lots of development workers, Americans, and of course, from Brazil, Nepal. Yeah, interns. So that's a 4-month program. And they learn our packaging, our marketing, if you're going to sell retail. There's dorms down there, 4 bunks to a dorm. So you're all invited. We built soil fertility by diverting our waste stream. So whether it's the waste of your animals or your kitchen or a restaurant, a co-op, wherever you've got a waste stream, let's get that in the soil. We're also a soy-free farm. We only eat fermented soy, but we don't use it in our livestock feed. I've got a unit coming up after lunch. If you want to sit in on my farm-generated feeds, we talk more about that, the phytoestrogens and things. More waste from cheese, right? We're going to have whey and things, so that can go into your program for fertility or fatten some pigs. Anyone making cheese? Is anyone from Wisconsin? That's why. Coral is living there. Yeah, so there's Wisconsin boy with the baby cow. I can't handle anything for a group photo. We do a little aquaponics. Big caution on that. Been doing it for a lot of years. Both with the static pond and then the closed loop recirculating system. It's sexy, it's exciting. You show them the white roots and they go, wow. But it's rarely appropriate. In fact, out at the ranch we've got a bigger system going down, and I always like to say we do aquaponic courses, mainly to talk people out of it. It's not an entry point. Okay, so if you're already doing vegetables and you got some fish, it might be a good marriage. But don't start people out with this technology. If land's expensive, if you're in a dense environment, all those things, it's a good fit. But over here, it might be inappropriate because of your energy costs or supply and some other things. So you can get this PowerPoint's going to be online, so you can read that. Okay, so there's the 10 fundamentals we talked about. Integrated livestock. See, we're selling lettuce, kale, some, European brassicas. We're supplying chefs, restaurants, grocery store. So we got a lot of crop residue that might not end up on the table. So there's pigs eating lettuce. So this is the pig expressing its pigness. This is the deep bed method. So that's 1 meter deep. We spray it with our beneficial microbes, and now we reduce our inputs. Why? Because we can use the manure for fertility and no antibiotics. No antibiotic. Because of the environment there, there's no disease pressure. This is the chicken expressing its chickenness. So they're out on grass, they're in the sunshine, like all our livestock. They get the greens for the carotenoids, builds up the vitamin A, much better than us. Vitamin D from sunshine. How about a chicken tractor? Yeah, so you can move this thing. So you got so many head in there, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they're mowing the lawn, they're fertilizing it for you. Yeah. So those are popular. If you go commercial with your chicken, you're going to need a chicken plucker. So I enjoy whizbangbooks.com. You can download their manuals now. We built our own chicken plucker, mechanical plucker. You can buy them too in probably Bangkok. Every livestock has a problem in the tropics. Goats will suffer from parasites during the wet grass cycle. So during a rainy day, during early morning dew, we keep them in-house, collect the manure, and we cut and carry. So all those salt hedges, the rhenzones, flamengas, things like that. I learned a lot from Dr. Price. Weston Price traveled the world back in the 40s and documented in his book traditional diets and how healthy cultures were staying healthy without medicines and the modern pressures. And traditional diets do these things: fertile soil, animals on pasture. We're doing just about everything opposite in modern agriculture. We've got feedlots, animals are in the dark, we're doing horrible things to the quality. Now it's profitable, agribusiness is profitable, but it doesn't feature any kind of health issue. Even vetiver, you know, we use that for erosion control and things, but at the right age, it's cut and carry. So I'm up in a workshop. If you want to jump in, farm-generated feed, hog feed production. That was my second note. And with the thank of Rebecca and Dawn and Doc, boy, that's a birthing process. I wrote a book, and these echo notes are well documented, well challenged, and it goes back and forth, and it's a lot of fun. I encourage you to think about writing some notes and working with Bixler and the crew if you got some good ideas, because they'll really polish you. So there's vetiver for hogs. I also write for magazines. So this is an agriculture magazine, and we trained an NGO. So this is one way you can help a community by lowering their production costs and increasing. These are all indigenous people up in a resort area. I mean, what a horrible place to work. You know, $300-400 a night per person, and they want to have organic pork on the menu. Now, with my 10-12 pigs, I can't keep a hotel, a restaurant happy. But we trained a guy, and he did a community. And now with 10 animals a week, 20 growers, they can always supply that to keep the menu topped off for Tom Cruise. So there they are, the happy pig on the sawdust bed. Here's one on fish feed production. So we pelletize it into a floating feed if you're into tilapia and carp and different things. We have to increase productivity, but we want to lower our input costs. So look at all that pollination, right? That's papaya power. But you can't get that if you're spraying poison, because you're killing the pollinators. And now what? You're out there with a paintbrush hand pollinating every morning? So here's one idea: anaerobic fermentation. If you don't want to make a compost tumbler, you might want to consider bokashi. That's from Japanese nature farming. It's a word that means fermented plant matter. Now, we have to be aware of putrefaction. That's the bad pathway. And it just happens. It rots. It decays. It rots. It creates methane gas. Sulfides is the rotten egg smell. Okay, those are bad fertilizers, because anything you smell left your fertility program. If your eyes are bleeding and watering, it's because of nitrogen and ammonification. Okay, odors, disease. See, if you introduce the beneficial microbes, you can ferment that same substrate and create value, create fertility. Bokashi. It's the Manny Pacquiao of fertilizers. Ding, ding. See, here's the difference. The normal aerobic compost, it creates heat, which is good. It kills off pathogen, disease, and weed seeds. But it's costing you fertilizer. It's costing you some amount of energy. Bokashi ferments. It pickles. It preserves that material and breaks it down when you bury it in the soil. It doesn't come humus and black, wonderful tilth in the jar. You need some kind of a container, some kind of a bucket, a pail, or a bunker, and we wrap that up. We can make 4 tons of bokashi there. And if you have 2-3 stalls, then you're able to harvest it, get it out, and refill while the other one's fermenting. So that's bokashi. There's an appendix in the book on alternatives. So maybe you can't get chopped straw. You could use wheat straw, rice straw, corn husks. Don't get trapped down by my one formula in the book. A lot of stuff. Like good manure, good bokashi is from waste. So if you're near a rice mill, get that stuff. If you can get the bagasse and the mud press from a sugar mill, use that stuff. One of the best-selling composting guides, Stu Campbell's, and his only mistake is the title, Let It Rot. May I distinguish decomposition from rotting? Rotting is the pathway of putrefaction. You'll see a lot of guides. Use well-rotted cow manure. Now, well, there could be diseases in there. There could be pathogens. No, we want fermentation or decomposition. Those are wild microbes. Those are aerobic bacteria. And we make compost. Don't make garbage. Now, you can also use bokashi in the kitchen. If you use just a rice bran or a wheat bran, right there, the microbes are in the pail. 1 kilo of bokashi will break down a pail of kitchen garbage, and that becomes fertilizer. Eggshells, meat, peelings, burnt rice, no liquid. It gets too wet for the microbes to control. But in general, all that stuff is going to ferment, and now you just take your worst soil and you're going to amend it deep down. 20-liter pail, dig a 30-liter hole in the ground, add your fermented kitchen garbage. And now we're going to companion plant, right? Fundamental number 3. So now, while we're waiting for that, we have to wait 2 weeks before we plant into fermented kitchen garbage. But we already got our legumes started. So we're fixing nitrogen for the banana, the papaya, the gourd, the melon. Heavy feeders do really well on FKG. There it is. The mung beans are coming up, and we get 2 crops in one. We get the papaya, the banana, and we get the beans. So there it is before and after. And with papaya, we get a 3rd crop of chili pepper underneath in the speckled lighting. So you might do your Thai chili. Of course, here they just call it chili. So 10 fundamentals there. We're not going to go through them all, but just highlighting a few. There's my study on vermicast production in the Philippines, and that's that unique top harvest method. And then we can use it in soil blocks. Okay, we made it. Halfway with 10 minutes left. Soil blockers. So this little device here might be one way. You can extrude your soil in the right recipe. We're going to have you make soil blocks out on the table by tomorrow. I got the materials coming together, I think. Thai style. So whether you call it natural farming, nature farming, permaculture, organic, there's all kinds of brands out there. And they tend to specialize in 5, 6, key fundamentals. Some do a better job than others. But you want to really look through all of these and make sure you're using as many of these that are appropriate. See, beneficial microbes do about equally number with pathogens. Most microbes out there are neutral. 90% of the microbes, they don't care about you, they don't care about your pig or your potato. They just have a job to do. But when we distort that environment, the neutrals follow the leader. And when it's pathogenic, it's detrimental. But if we add the beneficial microbes, the effective microbes. Now we start to sway that thing into a more beneficial condition. It's just one of the tools up there with fertility and compost. You got to evaluate your program costs. It's very expensive to restructure clay soil, bringing in sand. But you can chemically, naturally balance your soil with certain additives. It's easiest, it's most economical to start with the biology. Inoculate and add. So that's what we do. We create living soil with a sustainable inoculation. If you do the 10 fundamentals, then your microbes have something to do. They work on all those materials and methods. We also treat the soil. We build soil systems in the water from the ground up. We can restore a water habitat. Here in Malaysia, we're throwing mud balls. I consulted a resort there, and they've got a tough environment there, and every time it rains, the garbage goes out to the reef. But we can take our mud balls and see they're time released. They go down in the detritus, the filth, the pollution. It'll chylate heavy metals and release nutrients, minimize dengue and malaria. The mud ball. See, it's time released. So no matter how much it rains, they're going to be there for a month or so. See, you can dump in your microbes all you want in a water system, but every time it rains, it'll flush. The mud ball sits down in the bottom. Oh, we put the microbes in our soap. Oh boy, baby skin really clears up. So whatever you're doing, make sure it's low-cost, high-value food production. Grow what you like to eat first, we say. Replace some of what you're buying most of. Find out what the community's doing. Spend 1 year with your first livestock system if you're just getting started. Don't go out and get a yak and a camel and 3 pigs and 10 ducks. Just specialize, perfect it, and then add. Master one technology at a time, maybe 2 vegetables at a time, and get those going, and plant 2 others and 2 others. Don't start slinging seeds, and utilize waste for food production. That's the goal here of my talk, is lower our costs. We've learned a lot from different lectures here. A couple years back, someone talked on farmer-managed natural regeneration. Here's an area with all kinds of trees dying to live, but they keep cutting them down. Huge root system. And you can selectively prune those and develop them. So I'm consulting on a project, and there it is, Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration. There's a website on it. And see, if you quit burning and cutting, these things can be thinned out, and you can pick the best ones for fuel, shade, plant your cacao underneath it. Yeah, this is a World Vision report. Real comprehensive on that one, and I think there's a speaker on it, and I'm going because this is a great technology. And we just learned about it a couple years ago, and now we're starting to do it. You file this stuff back, and then you implement with your eco options out there. Here's another one. So this is a big site, and the guy wants to do stuff. This is the business of climate change, right? Monkey business. We're doing our part to save the environment. They went solar, and then they printed thousands of plastic banners bragging about how righteous they are. And here's one plastic banner that's 1/5 the carbon footprint. Hewlett-Packard. How about an area with wooden signs? If it's sustainably harvest hardwoods, communal living without the communism, an eco-village. Yeah. So this next 7-hectare permaculture site is all our wood waste. So we've got 2 hectares there in town, the kitchen, and then Aloha Ranch. We learned the charcoal production here. There was a group promoting the horizontal kiln. That's a fun one we do with rammed earth, stabilized rammed earth. The walls are half rice hull. We do earthquake resistant design from Dr. Gernau Minky. So there's some of our things we're growing into. I know if I look at her, she's going to tell me I'm done, right? Okay, cheese production, natural fuels. So a lot going on at our new site. Invite you to my sessions on mushroom tomorrow, and today on feed production if you'd like.